my cup. No UFO live stream shows on what the truck. Hold up, what am I thinking? Terrestrial materials on at 1 p.m. Eastern. Terrestrial material, give me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you'll find me at. Aliens and AI, Matt, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps and rotary motion. The cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Gotti and Tim G. Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Live stream shows on what the truck. Hold up, what am I thinking? Terrestrial materials on at 1 p.m. Eastern. Terrestrial material, give me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you'll find me at. Aliens and AI, Matt, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps and rotary motion. Cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Garvey and Tim G. Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go! Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please don't forget to like, share, and me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you'll find me at. Aliens and AI, man, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps in rotary motion. The cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Garvey and Tim G. Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. Don't forget to do that, huh? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Terrestrial Material, where we talk about the material us terrestrials are interested in. And, dude, it's been a lot of Luis Elizondo lately. I guess that's what us terrestrials are interested in. How's everybody doing? Let me go through chat here. Dude, I feel like, I don't know, like we've missed some shows lately, and I feel like I'm almost a little out of practice of even like being here and talking at this point. Even though it's not been like that long, right? But like my head, I guess, has been in so many other places because of the pinched nerve issue in my back that I ran into. And so I've been doing a lot of rehab for that. It's like 3 days a week. So there's a lot to keep my mind kind of not extremely focused on this topic. But what I have noticed is it's gotten better though. So that's always a good news thing. Obviously, Steve Hammers, good to see you. John Stokes, Marcus Fishlock. We got Rotary Motion, of course. Gebs, you're in the song too. Nick, Cosmic Twilight, good to see you. How you guys doing? Happy Sunday. So what are we talking about today, huh? Does anybody know? The book, Imminent. Luis Elizondo's book officially released on Tuesday. All right. Now, the book itself, I think it's around 300 and some pages. I listened to the book. I've been doing like morning walks and all sorts of stuff to kind of keep my body moving because, quite frankly, with the back thing, I need to be moving as much as I can. I mean, the movements was what's going to really help me at the end of the day. So I haven't been sitting too much. So the audio book has been nice because I can get up and move along with it. But obviously we had leaks. You know, we had a lot of leaks. We knew some of the bigger things that were coming out of the book. And to be honest with you, the leaks, unfortunately, were some of the biggest moments in the book. You know, there wasn't, I mean, there were other moments that were definitely interesting in the book that we'll go over. But I mean, overall, the big highlights got hit, which I'm actually realized I'm not wearing my wedding ring right now. I took my wedding ring off. That's weird. I'm still married. Okay, guys, I'm still married. I took it off for some reason. I don't know. It's not here. It's just really weird. That kind of threw me off. But anyway, it definitely hit some of the highlights that we had seen from the book so far. There are, like I mentioned, though, some other interesting parts of the book. When I was starting to kind of decide on how I really wanted to go through this, I mean, I sat down with this book, guys. I'm not kidding you. I took notes through all the chapters, as much as I could, remembering what I could, because I didn't want to miss anything, but I also wanted to be able to kind of reference back over time and see what maybe has changed, or just as a good refresher on Luis Elizondo himself, from moving forward, what could happen with him. And it's always good to be able to kind of go back and do that. I was in a couple of Twitter spaces throughout the week where having those notes were good. I mean, it's helpful. I was able to pull out some facts that I probably wouldn't have remembered. I mean, I don't read a lot. Like, I don't go through a lot of books. So when you have all this kind of content that's in front of you, even though the book itself it's miles long and an inch deep, I guess we can state this right off the top. And we didn't get disclosure out of the book. We weren't expecting that, though. So, I'm not let down by that at all. I feel like a lot of people that I've seen react to the book, at least in the UFO community side of things, not everyone has been very, very happy with it. I think a lot of people's expectations were built for this book for, multiple years here now. And I think they just expected to get more out of it. And maybe they've realized that Elizondo himself, at least for me, maybe is just not as relevant to the topic as maybe he once was or ever really was, if that makes sense. And I'll try to go into that to make it a little bit more sense along down the road with the book. Chris Mellon obviously wrote the foreword for the book. It's always cool to hear these guys talk the book themselves, like them doing the narration. It was cool to hear Mellon talk. Honestly, when I started with the foreword and I was going to, take some notes as I was moving around, I was thinking to myself, oh man, I'm gonna have to really pay attention to how Mellon's talking, because obviously Mellon's very, very well spoken and very articulate, and his wordplay is very, very good. I was happy to know that and find that he kept it pretty simple, right? He didn't go too crazy with it. I kind of made a joke earlier in the week that he made it kind of sounded like he was supposed to enter this into the UFO log event, because he brought up obviously things like the Robertson panel and the Condon report. And I've got tons of notes, guys, I have to keep going through here because there's just so much to talk about. He brings up the Nimitz event, 2004 Tic Tac. He talks about, meeting Lou for the first time and how he felt about that and what he really feels Lou and Christopher Mellon's whole goal with this entire movement that they've been, pushing behind the scenes here. Really what that goal was all about, and it really ended up he summarized, I guess, the main theme of his foreword, Christopher Mellon's foreword. It's all about kind of preventing another 9/11, and we said 9/11 the first 10 minutes here, so the video's already dead. But, it's to prevent an intelligence failure on that kind of a level, again, like a Pearl Harbor. I mean, this is where what he really feels is most important, And so that's just kind of a brief little summary. Obviously, he gives Lou a lot of accolades throughout the book. He even compares him to like the great man theory, which I thought was interesting. It is almost like, looking at Luis Elizondo as this man throughout history that changes history. A man that comes forward and kind of blazes a new path, changes the course of history, I guess is a way to say it. And then, of course, he talks about the stigma and so on and so forth. So interesting. Was it new stuff? No, it wasn't anything new, but there's a little bit that you can glean from that. Before we get even, I guess, more into like the highlights of the book, because as I started kind of putting this review together, if you could say that, because I've never put a book review together, and the hardest part was like trying to figure out what I wanted to add, what I wanted to leave out, and there's just so much. You get that urge when you do a show like this. You're like, I want to tell them everything about the book, and you can't. So you kind of got to give a little bit of a light overflow. But the composition and the flow of the book, I think, is a good place to move into after the forward, because obviously Mellon's writing is very good. and it's cohesive, and you don't feel, you can tell the guy can write. Okay. Now it's hard to say that, give those same accolades to Lou. You can tell from the composition of the book, the chapters don't flow well. That was kind of the most annoying part of the book, I think, to me, is as I was going through, all of the chapters. I mean, there's 25 chapters, 300 and some pages. I would have rather have seen, maybe if he had like a structuring process, or if he had someone that would come in, which I don't think he had any help, really, not much, putting the book together. I think he could have got the chapter list down to probably 12 or 13, maybe. There's not, and by the way, guys, there's not going to be too many visual aids today. Like I said, I had the audio book. I got a couple of the photos that are from, I just want to get this out of the way, that are from like the show, like the craft, the bubble theory he has, that I'll bring back up and show you guys as we get along to it. But yeah, it's mostly just going to be me with the camera. What can you do? I did the audio. So you got to look at my mug the entire time. But yeah, as far as the composition is concerned, I think he could have got the chapter list down. Some of the chapters were extremely short, and you had some of the chapters that were packed up, and you would think that it would be packed full of, knowledge on what the chapter was about, but it's not. I mean, there's a chapter about orbs where he starts talking about, the behind the scenes at OSAP and what went on with his time there. And you're like, well, why didn't we just have more of like a one or two OSAP focused chapters? We needed a lot better structure, man, a lot better flow. And I'm not saying I could have done better than him by any means. But it just didn't have that feeling of, like if you guys ever read Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, that felt like, from what I remember, at least, it's been some years, but that felt like it had a lot more cohesion. It had a lot more flow. So that's the case. He does repeat himself a lot too. So that was something that I noticed, that he would go back and just reiterate who people were. He would reiterate events again, where it's like, oh, we already kind of had that. Can we move forward from that? Just the overall writing. It's not like it's unlistenable. I mean, you could listen to it for sure. You could read the book. It's not like you're going to close the book because of the form, because of the composition and the flow of it. It doesn't destroy it. But it does make it just that little bit off, where you're like, man, that polish that I wish we had. And I'll tell you what is interesting to me about that too, is I'm a big believer that Elizondo has really been counting on this book to do not only, just to do really well, right? I think a lot of the money that he's wanted to accrue from this, when you're looking at retirement, you're looking at down the road. He talks a little bit about in the book about some kind of outside consulting, contracting work he's done in aerospace along the way, even after TTSA. But I think a lot after TTSA, this book and building up kind of like his presence online and building up an opportunity, the fame to be able to put a book like this in motion, it would seem to me that he would want the book to be as stellar and perfect as he could, that he would have took the extra time. It feels like we heard about this book 2 years ago, but he decided to write it, 8 months ago, kind of a thing. It still feels rushed, even though we know it didn't have to be. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, I don't want to turn people away from the book because of the composition. Like I said, I don't want to overdo it, but I just want to really put my point out there that I feel like we could have done better with that. Moving on. I mean, the book itself, there's a lot of highlights that are interesting things. I personally think that the book was written for the general public. However, I think that if you didn't have your head kind of in the UFO community the last few years, there were still moments that were deep, to where you kind of had to understand who these people were, a little bit more of the background, mainly when it comes to like OSAP and who Hal Puthoff is and who all these cast of characters that have been around, OSAP and quote unquote ATIP and all of these things. And Gary Reed, Lou's boss had essentially kind of went after him in Lou's terms, because when he ended up resigning and leaving the Pentagon. So I think you had to have a little bit of knowledge that you could have got lost along the way. But the book starts out kind of basic, as most kind of it's like a memoir, you guys would call it. You know, it starts off kind of basic. He goes through his military background in his 20s. You know, when he joined the army, he did, you know, he's saying he did 3 combat tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East. He talks about being born in Texas, but he said, you know, he's a Florida boy, you know, which I thought was an interesting thing. One of the, you know, parts that kind of grabbed me that that stood out, which I think the first half of the book is probably where he might lose people. The first half is definitely slow. I think the book kind of picks up around chapters 17, maybe around 17, when he starts to get in more of his speculation and his theories on what he thinks the craft are doing and things like that. But on the early side of the book, what seemed to interest me was his relationship with his dad. The way he talks about kind of growing up with his dad and how his dad encouraged him to get into martial arts, and his dad taught him about how to build guns and, you know, how to shoot guns, and that he told stories about going out. His dad would take Lou and they would go out in kind of a remote area, and they would put together like a rocket launcher kind of a thing and show him how to build this like craft these weapons and stuff. It was really interesting. And, you know, there's parallels I found with my dad growing up. You know, my dad did 2 tours in Vietnam, and my dad was you know, we had guns and stuff growing up, and my dad would take me to the range and shoot, and he showed me stuff with guns. And I was like, oh shit, I get that. But then he also talked about stories about how if something would go wrong at school with Lou, you know, how if Lou was feeling bullied, or if he had issues with teachers or what have you, that his dad would go up to school and he would, you know, give the people a what for. And his dad was just that way. And I was like, you know, God dang, my dad's was a lot like that too. You know, when I broke my arm when I was a kid, I broke my arm clean through up here from hockey. And it was the winter time, and all I could be was in a sling. And when I finally got to the point where I could go back to school, I went up to the front door to go in, and the office lady said, the door's locked. You can't come in this way. You got to go around. And so I had to go around on the ice and the snow and stuff like that. And my dad pissed my dad off, man. My dad son's got a broken arm. He went up there and he blew hot about it, you know? And so I'm listening to Lou talk about his dad, and I'm like, shit, you know, there's a lot of that I can definitely relate to, without a doubt. And same thing with his mother. I mean, Lou talks a lot about his relationship with his mom throughout the book, and how he was very, very close with his mother. Excuse me. Really, a touching part of the book is when he talks about his mother's death, you know, and how he kind of felt the life leave her. And it's really, there were moments like that in the book where I was like, damn, like I didn't think I was going to kind of have that feel moment, or have that relatable moment with him, even on any kind of a level. I figured I'd go through it and be mostly distant, but that stuff I related to. And I was like, man, you know, he talks about one day his mom, realizing that his mom was going to die. His mom had talked to him about death, essentially. And he asked his mom, are you going to die one day? And she goes, well, yeah, I'm going to die one day. And he said he knew that day was going to come, and he really was afraid of that day coming. He feared it. And I'm very close with my mom. So I was like, man, you know, I've had thoughts like that before too. I thought, damn, you know, that day is going to come, and that's going to be a really horrible day. And so I definitely related with him on a lot of that stuff in the first half of the book, without a doubt. Like I said, I can't go through everything. I mean, this might feel a little bit jumbled as we kind of go around it because we're trying to just hit some of the highlights here. One thing I was happy that we did get to hear more about in the book was John Robert, his buddy that he used to drive back and forth. He used to commute to the Pentagon with. And we first heard about John Robert from Manny's documentary, or at least I did, Manny's Who's Lou documentary, and how John Robert and him were buddies, and they had these nautical patents, and Lou and him kind of put this company together. They never really got off the ground, but it was called Never Ship Empty. And we always wanted to hear more about John Robert, but I also wanted to hear more about OSAP and more of the beginnings of how Lou kind of got into that program and just the lead up from him in a one setting situation. Like we've heard Lou talk about it, but it's been, sporadic, because I've always wanted to like build this hierarchy from OSAP to ATIP and understand this process. That was something I wanted from the book. But the reason why John Robert is important to this is because we learn that John Robert was also an intelligence officer. Okay, Lou had actually served time with him in the military. But we learned that John Robert is the reason why Lou was recommended to Jay Stratton and quote unquote Rosemary Kane, this other person that Lou talks about that was in the meeting, of why he was recommended for OSAP to begin with. Okay. And because I wondered about that too. I had never understood really why they had came to Lou at the start, but the whole idea, and Lou kind of talks about how OSAP was looking for and I'm getting some kind of notification on my phone. That's going to bother me. About how they wanted him for, counterintelligence security purposes. But that's how Lou initially got into OSAP, was John Roberts recommended him, which is a very, very interesting deal to me. And John Roberts is said to, later on in the book to kind of work with Lou throughout ATIP, and we'll get into a little bit more of the ATIP situation a little bit later. But the book I think that Lou does a really good job at explaining just that process throughout OSAP through ATIP. Now, look, there's a lot of contradiction. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Where Lou in the past has kind of changed his story a little bit on the dates. The dates are a little weird. In the book, he talks about it being late 2008, early 2009. He doesn't get really specific in the book about when Stratton and this Rosemary Kane person came to him initially in DC to talk to him about the program. Okay. There's even times where, he had said in the past that he had nothing to do with OSAP, that don't lump him into OSAP. And then there was times where he had mentioned that he was maybe a co-director of the program. But as you learn in the book, he puts himself more into like not a grunt, but like he's just like a regular initiate, like a regular contributor. He's not in some grandiose position in OSAP. And I'm going to be honest with you, even with all of the discrepancies in the past, I tend to think that the process, the timeline in this book that Lou gives of when he first got into OSAP, went and met Lakatsky, had the interview, and progressed forward throughout the process, I think this is probably the most legit version of it that we've heard. And the reason why I think that is because I feel like he knows he kind of can't bullshit this one. At least this one this time, that with the book in there, because I think that people would come out and kind of come at him. I think he's trying to ignore, the discrepancies in the past with the dates. If you take that out, I think this is probably the timeline that makes sense. So throughout the book, it just that was an interesting thing for me. I was happy that I was kind of getting that hierarchy in there at that point. Of course, he talks about a really big part of the book, obviously, and it's in kind of the first half here, is he talks about Colares. And he talks about how he learns about Colares, right? He talks about this very first dinner with OSAP after he kind of accepts the position from Jim Lakatsky and calls Jim Lakatsky and says, hey, yeah, I want to join up. So they go to this dinner with Hal Putoff is there, of course, Jim Semivan, all the OSAP guys are there. And then they have this invite to dinner. I believe that it's a 4-star Brazilian General Uchoa, I think is how you pronounce his name. And this was a man who I guess I can't remember if it was his father. I think it was either father or grandfather or probably his father, did a lot of the research that was on Colares. And Lou seemed to have that Colares event be a really big deal for him. That was kind of a big moment in that original dinner that made him start to kind of understand that the phenomena has some reality to it. Like that there's something to these stories. He even talks about when he looks around the dinner table and sees all these credentialed people, there's no way that you could mistake any of this to be fake or not real. Right? Now, do I agree with him on that? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I mean, I think what stood out to me about that whole story, without having to, get into a lot of that story, because for time's sake, we're already 20 minutes in here, is that it was interesting to me that Lou kind of took that off face value. I think that there's something to the Kolaris case. I do. But I think it said something that Lou would just kind of look at titles and people, and especially like Hal. Like Lou, you can tell throughout this book, really admires Hal Puthoff a lot. And if he was just willing to, right at the jump, kind of buy in right away, that's not the greatest sign, I don't think. It's not the greatest sign. Now, he does, obviously, later in the book, he talks about going through and doing a lot more research and things like that on his own. And he starts digging. He even tries to go through FOIA and stuff like that. But it's like this, I don't know, he just seems like he's just on board right away. And that seems to be kind of a problem to me. And even Christopher Mellon, as we'll maybe get into a little bit later on here, when they meet and Lou kind of gives him his briefing, Mellon's kind of all in real quick too, real fast at that point. So now, I mean, I guess on the same topic as Kolaris, Lou references Kolaris a lot throughout the book, and he uses it as like a example for a lot of his stories that he brings up. I mean, obviously we talked about this when we were going over the leaks in the book, where Lou has these encounters at his house with orbs, these green orbs, right? And how these chased him down his hallway, and his wife had seen him at that point. I think he talks about the kids had seen the orbs too. And so he kind of references like this hitchhiker effect, the Skinwalker Ranch thing. I mean, if you buy into that, if you believe in that story, obviously Lou doesn't give us any proof that he's seeing these orbs at his house. But I'm just relaying you the information here from the book. But that's what he talks about here. He doesn't give us any proof of it, but he talks about how these orbs start to, over time with work with OSAP, he gets all of these encounters. He even says that his neighbors, after a while, had started seeing orbs and were like, "What are you doing at work?" But he references the colors of the orbs, the colors being kind of the big tie-in between the orbs at his house and the orbs at Kolaris, where the blue orbs at Kolaris, the blue orbs have he tells stories about, these are the ones that do the damage to people. When you get in the vicinity of them, or you get around the person, or they go through you, that's when it causes the damage. And he talks about how, because the orbs weren't blue at his house, that he wasn't really worried about it. It was just kind of a sticky part of the job. That was what Lukatsky initially had said to him when he joined OSAP. Is he said, "Hey, there's some sticky stuff to this job if you get involved." And so he was like, the orbs, these hitchhikers, that must have been what he meant. So he references that. But of course, like I mentioned, no proof, unfortunately. And that's kind of a theme of the book. I don't want to get too overall right now, but I will say that. I mean, the reality of it is Lou makes a lot of claims in this book. There's a lot of speculation in the book. We don't get documents. We're not getting a lot of names and things that we've never heard of. Stuff really isn't there. And I think there's a reason for a lot of that. And I'll go into that as we continue to push on here. Lou tells a really interesting story kind of along the line with the orbs. The orbs in Kolaris were said to, was it Kolaris? Let me see. Yeah. So the orbs in Kolaris were said to also put off like a green light. Like there were lights that would come off of these and like green beams of light. He told a really interesting story. Right outside of Kuwait there was 2 M1 tanks that Lou had kind of rolled up on this little convoy here on the edge of Kuwait that had a perfect hole that was punched all the way through them. Okay. And there was actually 2 of these tanks. They were parked at the checkpoint right on the way to Iraq. All right. And he said that when he talked to like the local goat herder, the goat herder said that he had seen a green flash in the sky. And so Lou thought to himself, well, that's got to be, maybe it's some kind of laser weapon, or maybe there's something along the lines with like a UAP kind of a thing that punched the hole right through that. All right. He said that he never really learned, and this is what I think is interesting. Okay. And this is why I'm kind of bringing up the no proof thing along with this. Because Lou says later on, when he went to investigate what had happened with those tanks, because they would bring them back and they would actually do a dial on it and figure out what happened. Lou said he never learned what happened to the tanks, just that a top secret SAP had classified the findings from the analysis. That was it. So, you know, it's like the thing here. He tells like the story and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's going to tell us kind of what happened, what they found. And he's like, it's classified. It's classified, right? And that sucks. Another big part of the book would be the remote viewing. Okay. The remote viewing sections, and it's kind of sporadic throughout, but these are some of the biggest claims in the book to me, where I'm just like, holy man, like we're really reaching out there. I mean, there could be something to remote viewing. I'm not here to debunk it, dude. I don't feel that it's something that if there was something to it, that it would be consistent. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just not sold on the topic yet. So when you start to get into these kind of claims from him, I'm like, geez Louise. You know, Lou talks about how he met with a man named Gene Lessman. Okay. And he met him in this like motel. And this is another part of this story that makes this kind of weird, is that Lou's like meeting these guys in these like weird hotels and they're trying to do remote viewing here. But this man, Gene Lessman, he's an intel officer and a recruiter, he said, for all things spooky in the Army. And Lou said he was interrogated by Gene, who brought up remote viewing for the first time ever. That Gene recruited soldiers for Stargate, obviously the Stargate program that Hal Puthoff led in the mid to late 60s, right? And I guess I should probably jump back one little step here. John Robertson, a big reason why he ended up actually recommending Lou for OSAP also was because of this situation here. Okay. So when Lou was obviously younger, he was approached about the remote viewing. And I feel like John Robertson kind of felt like, or it was John Roberts. Why do I always want to say Robertson, guys? John Robert. Okay. There's no S, there's no son, there's no any of that. Okay. But he ends up recommending him because of this program that Lou said he was kind of doing, the side training that he was doing, that this Gene Lessman, I'm terrible with names, guys. I'm going to have to look. I'm better with faces. Gene Lessman kind of brought him in and started teaching him remote viewing, because he asked him, hey, what do you know about remote viewing? And Lou goes, nothing. I don't know what that is, right? And so he kind of goes through this process. But Lou, the interesting part about it is Lou starts to supposedly get better at it. He looks at himself as a very, very consistent remote viewer. And that over time, Lou would actually use remote viewing in his intel missions. And he tells a story about how he was remote viewing some intel on a location, and that he had got supposedly like a bad feeling about that location. I'm trying to remember if I've got it. The actual location off the top of my head, I can't remember, but it's in a war scenario. Okay. I can't remember off the top of my head. Forgive me. The book is huge. But he talks about how he goes in remote viewing, looks at this intel, and has a bad feeling about entering into this area. Okay. And he tells his superiors, hey, I don't think we should go into this area. And the superiors are saying, yeah, well, we got to go in here. And so an ally team goes in, and an IED goes off and kills all these people, you know? So Lou is essentially saying that he's like remote viewing and seeing these circumstances. He's actually basing a lot of his intel work decisions off of remote viewing. It's wild to say that. When I heard him talk about that in the book, I was like, holy, you know, like, wow, that's crazy to think that people are out there doing that. You know, he better be right. You know, that's something that I don't know if I would play with. I don't know if it's a tool that I would play with people's lives, man. So I thought that was very, very interesting, but a tough deal. And then obviously everybody knows the story about the Angels and how they met in the Pentagon, Lou and four of his other remote viewing buddies, and they shook the bed. You know, they remote viewed and the bed got shook of the terrorist that was there. So another big claim, once again, we don't have any evidence on any of this stuff. You know, these are the moments in the book where you have to either believe Lou on this, you're going to go all in, or you're not going to go all in. So that's there. Kind of moving on, an interesting part too is where Lou obviously confirms for him. I mean, he says, "Hey, look, the Eric Davis notes are real. All right. And he also talks about how the Edgar Mitchell leak was really where the notes came from. A lot of people were speculating where those Eric Davis, the Wilson, no, Admiral Wilson conversation, those notes came from. And the speculation was always that it came from Edgar Mitchell's files. Lou is saying that, yep, that's where it came from. After Edgar died, they went into his safe, and that's where they got them. Pretty interesting stuff. He goes into a lot, talks about obviously, you know, the private sector holding a lot of the UAP material. And this is kind of where the Air Force kind of oversees a lot of that, and that the legacy program is really buried in more of the private sector, and that the Air Force is ultimately controlling it. That's kind of where he's going with it, which seems, I mean, interesting enough. I mean, I personally think that there is stuff. I think we do have craft. I think we do have material, and it does make sense that where that would be. So I'm not really into kind of like rebutting that or anything. There is like a lot, I guess I should say this too. There are some things like that in this book that I don't disagree with them on. You know, I definitely don't disagree with them on. I think companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, and a lot of these companies like this Raytheon, I think they do have material, man. I think that they do. It just makes sense that it would be there. So he mentions stuff like that. He mentions kind of talking about how, I guess we can go over this too while we're on it. There was rumored material, and from what I heard, it was from Lockheed. So I'm going to say it's from Lockheed, but he doesn't specifically name Lockheed in the book. But that Lockheed Martin had want to, and David Grush kind of references this too. I guess that's really where I heard it from, was when Grush was on Rogan, that the material, UAP material, Lockheed wanted to divest themselves. They wanted to get rid of this UAP material. And that was what they were trying to do with OSAP 2, was get a hold of this material from Lockheed. And that the story was, and I always wondered why they wanted the material, you know, or why Lockheed wanted to get rid of it. What was the point? Grush never talked about that. But Lou talks about how Lockheed, well, like I said, I'm saying Lockheed. He's not saying that, but he's saying that the reason why they wanted to get rid of the material is because they had hit a wall with the material. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't work with it anymore. And they had felt that it had essentially become a liability for them to have the material. And so they said, you know, it's like a hot potato. I can't do anything with it, so I'm just going to give it away. But they said that they had to go up to the higher ups at the Air Force and get the approval for it. But Lou said that Lockheed essentially knew that there was no way they were going to get the approval. So they kind of put him on a wild goose chase for it. And so these are all like, it's just another example of why he believes that they have this material. But Lou's never seen the material, right? That never went through. And like I said, the legacy program and what I think Lou has to do with that, I want to talk about more at the end. So I'll wrap a lot of this stuff up nearing the end, guys. So we're going somewhere. You know how I am. Trust me. We might get a little weird for a little bit. Might feel a little jump, but we always get there. We always get there. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out, dude. All right. Of course, the Roswell conversation with Hal Puthoff. We talked a lot about that. I mean, Hal tells him, look, they're non-human bodies. There were 4 bodies that were recovered. Lou says, you know, the one part about the Roswell story that we didn't have from the leak, there was like extra data that was there, where in the leaks we heard about, obviously Lou says, look, or Hal told him that the crash had split into 2 pieces. It was one craft. But what was left out, because we didn't have the whole book, which I always wondered, are we going to get, you know, extra details? I want the extra details from the full book. Lou says that one of the crafts had hit, and we've heard about stories like that before, 2 crashes coming together, or two crafts. But the second one didn't crash; it flew away, which I've never heard that before. So that was interesting enough. So you get a little bit more of a depth when it comes to that. He talks about how they knew how they knew about Roswell within hours of the crash happening, but they covered it up. He said Lou claims that Project Mogul was just a complete cover up, that it was non-human intelligence for sure, not our crafts. Just as a little overview for that. He starts kind of getting into the Manhattan Project, where he claims like the secrecy of the entire program, the legacy program, is deeper than the Manhattan Project security or secrecy, which, yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. So you get a little bit more of that. He kind of pit stops for a little bit and brings up like the Five Eyes, which is interesting, like the intelligence sharing group between it's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, UK. Kind of mentions that there's probably some behind the scenes with them sharing information, which is interesting. He's got a lot of opinions throughout the book about just the nature of UAP, kind of like the nature of the phenomena, what he thinks is really going on with it. I see Rotor, you catch my eye in the chat. How old was Lou in 47? I don't know. Lou wasn't around. Lou wasn't around in 47. Dude, you're killing me, man. I don't know why that caught my eye. I've kind of been looking at chat a little bit as we're going here. But there's just so much I kind of wanted to get in here for you guys. So most of what he says is stuff he was told. Yes, Marcus. Yes. And I'm going to get to that. We're going to go over that at the end as I'm kind of wrapping this thing up. I just want to give you guys some of the highlights here. If you didn't have a chance to read it, or if you maybe you don't want to, or maybe you just kind of want to have a little bit of refresher as we're going. Lou doesn't feel that the UAP would stop a nuclear war. You know, I think he's mentioned some of that before. The threat narrative is definitely, I think, still, it's present in the book. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. But he doesn't feel that UAP would stop a nuclear war. He obviously uses us dropping our nuclear bombs, and they didn't stop that, right? UAP never came in and stopped the Hiroshima, Nagasaki bombs. Didn't stop Chernobyl. You know, he's got good examples for that, which he might be right. He might be right. I don't know. There's always been this lore where in ufology where, these beings are just all love. They're all here to help us. Lou thinks that that's maybe not the case. And he's got a really interesting take on it, I think, as we go through a little bit longer. But yeah, doesn't feel they would stop a nuclear war. Doesn't really, not sold that they're here to save us. Okay. But the interesting thing is when we're kind of staying with Roswell here. I don't want to get too far off this because of this point here. Okay. He talks about the EMP. Okay. He talks about having a conversation with Hal Puthoff in a skiff where they kind of feel that they've come up with maybe a secret vulnerability behind these UAP, that there could be almost an electrical circuit system that's involved with these UAP because of what happened with Roswell. He says that the Roswell crash was initiated through an EMP. Okay. Now, the thing that I wanted him to talk about, and this was kind of a letdown for me, whether you were going to believe his answer or not, I wanted to get more of what he was saying. I wanted to hear more of his opinion, okay? But he says he doesn't have the answer for why UAPs are engaging with our nuclear sites. He talks a lot about this throughout the book. He brings up Malmstrom. He brings up Minot. He brings up the Rendlesham Forest multiple times throughout the book. And he brings up old cases all through the book too. I mean, there's a lot of that, not to tangent too much here, but there's a lot of that. And he brings up Cash Landrum, he doesn't say it though, which I was like, wow. And I guess that's another irritating thing where I said, you have to, it's a good example of where you kind of have to have some knowledge about the topic, or else you would fall short in understanding a little bit along the way. Like he says December 1980, and he explains the Cash Landrum case, but he doesn't say the people's name, doesn't say it's that. It's like, put that in there, man, put that in there. I mean, I don't need it, but, the people that are buying the book, who are the mainstream people, are going to need it. But he says he doesn't know why they're around our nuclear sites. What he describes a story where you had a UAP that would come in out at Los Alamos. This was years ago. And it would come over top of a nuclear device that we had. That there was an orb. I believe it was 2 orbs came in. And he said he couldn't tell if it was like studying the nuclear device or scanning it, whatever it was doing. But the interesting part is that in the days leading after that incident, there were discs that would come in, and those discs would hover over parts or hover over that nuclear device wherever they moved it to. So it wasn't outside anymore. It was maybe somewhere in Los Alamos, but it knew where it was. It was attracted to it. Okay. And the attraction to our nuclear technology and things like that. This is something that Lou goes into the book that is very new, that I had never heard about, which is very interesting. I want to kind of segue us in here to this project, this project that Lou had tried to put together with Jay Stratton. This was during the ATIP time, okay, was called Interloper. This was probably the number, I don't know, maybe one or two moments in the book where I was like, oh, okay, this is actually pretty interesting, pretty cool. Project Interloper. And what that was all about was that Lou, throughout the book, indicates about UAP interest in water as well as the nuclear situation. And they kind of devised this plan. And years ago, I remember Lou being asked in a couple of interviews where people asked, well, has the U.S. government ever tried to bait UAP? Have you ever tried to bring them in? Okay. And Lou was always like, I can't speak on anything like that. Okay. But now he does. So he said that they had this plan that they ran all the way up the Joint Chiefs of Staff to take multiple heavy nuclear carriers out into a large body of water. It doesn't really say which, if I remember right. But he talks about bringing these large nuclear carriers out into the water, multiples, and like setting up a honeypot for these craft to come in. And then when these craft would come in, they would obviously run the data, radar, study the interaction with that. Ultimately, to my to my letdown, they never went through. They never had. So the old get me excited again in the book and then pull it right back with, yeah, it didn't happen. There's just a few moments of that's involved. So I don't know, that was something new. I thought was interesting. The interloper situation. I thought that was kind of cool, right? There's not, like I said, there's not a whole lot of new stuff. There's a lot of stuff, but it's not a lot new, when it comes to that. But that's a relationship that he kind of talks about with the nukes there. Obviously, the 23-minute story, we went over that. The 23-minute video story, that's in the book. I think we got a really good description of the video in the book from the leak that we had. If you guys remember going over that, not a whole lot to really add to that story. He's just really big on that being something that's not ours, and that's a really good theme throughout the book too to mention is that Lou's theme throughout this book is this is not our technology, guys. Lou doesn't agree with me. I think we do. I think the Tic Tac stuff is ours, personally. I think that is something that we've back engineered. I think we have made progress over time. Lou doesn't think so. So he's always saying, no, this is from somewhere else. It's rumored to be from another planet. Okay? He's very, very much, it's not China. It's not Russia. He sticks with that theme, guys. He doesn't get off theme. And that's a good point to bring up too, is that he never really moves off of his theme that he's always been on. It's still something that's a threat, still something that we have to look out for. But he brings up the 23-minute video, kind of goes over that. He does compare it to he compares the movement of the triangle, the orbs. It's kind of hard to even describe it because the triangle in the video, the three orbs, they shift, right? They shift around. Do I have three things? They shift around. They change shape. And he talks about how obviously he felt like it was like it was playing with the Predator drone. The UAP was. God, I hate saying UAP. I want to say UFO, but I'm going to say UAP a lot throughout this because that was just kind of what was said in the book. So, and so he says it's very similar to what Dietrich explained with the incident with the Tic Tac. Felt like they were playing with them. I felt like it was playing with them. So he makes a lot of connections to that. He makes so many connections, guys, throughout the book to Tic Tac crafts, orbs. This is really the craft that Lou seems to be interested in the most. He talks a little bit about triangles that we'll get to as we continue on here. But it's very small. Lou loves his orbs. He loves his cigars. He loves the cigar shapes and that craft. So it's interesting enough. Gary Nolan is mentioned in the book as well. He talks about the caudoputamen, the area in the brain that seems to be engaged the most. And I'm not an expert on Gary Nolan's research, so I'm going to do the best I can to explain here. But he talks about how he's really, really interested in Gary Nolan's work, how he appreciates it, how remote viewing could be tied to that area of the brain, and how remote viewing your ability to remote view even better than like the normal person could be linked to that, the size of that area in the brain. And I kind of feel like he references himself there a little bit, where he feels like, maybe that's why he's such a good remote viewer. Now, he also talks about, which I think is interesting and along the same lines, is bloodline, Cherokee blood. Okay. He mentions that Cherokee blood throughout the research has shown that there's a link to that with like ability, maybe like psychic ability. And let me try to like grab the exact thing that he said here. But this is really an interesting part that stood out. This was one of the top parts for me, to be very honest with you. But he talks about how the people that were in ATIP, everyone seemed to have like this Cherokee blood background. And when he mentions, so he theorizes that Cherokee blood has a connection to UAP interactions and remote viewing ability. So it's not just remote viewing, it's also interaction. So maybe like these encounters are going to happen with more people that have this Cherokee bloodline. But he also talks about how he feels that maybe he's almost destined to join OSAP and get on this quest just due to his Cherokee blood. Pretty interesting speculation. Of course, it's speculation, but it's very, very interesting. Yeah, he says most of ATIP had Cherokee blood in their background. Lou questions whether or not it was fate that he was in this program and destined to look into the subject. Man, it's interesting. I don't know if I have Cherokee blood. You guys have Cherokee in you? I should get that checked. Maybe that's why I seen orbs. And look, I've had a sighting. You guys know this. I've had a sighting. I've seen 2 glowing orbs in the middle of the day in the sky. So I don't disagree with that. The orb thing is going on. It's an interesting thing. Let me see. Where are we at, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, so he kind of makes references to Gary Nolan in the research and claims that there's definitely connections that are there. How could Luis Elizondo write a book without talking about the 5 observables? Those, of course, he goes into a little bit more detail. It's not a whole lot, but he obviously explains them. The 5 observables: hypersonic velocity, instantaneous acceleration, low observability, which is obviously the oxymoron there, transmedium travel, anti-gravity. But he brings up the 6th one, and this is why I even bring this up to you guys. The 6th observable, he's saying, is the biological effects. Okay, these are the effects that come onto the body, whether that be radiation burns. He talks about people having radiation burns. And I guess maybe this is a good time to do this. Let me bring this, maybe not this image up. Like I said, we did have a couple of these images that I wanted to grab for you guys. Let's move over here really quick. You guys don't have to look at my mug for a minute here. Okay, so the biological effects. Okay, there's definitely in the top 3 moments of the book is when Lou starts to theorize really this bubble. Okay, that's around this craft, and honestly, before we even show this one, let's do this one. Okay, let's go here. Okay. This is kind of like the symbol for, this is kind of like a good image for the gimbal. We brought this up last week or 2 weeks ago. Or was it 2 weeks? Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Where this bubble, Lou believes that this bubble is a bubble that warps space-time. Okay? And he has a lot of theories about this bubble, to be honest with you. But a lot of the theories about this bubble warping space-time is that a lot of people experience, as we've heard over time, missing time when they have these UAP encounters. Okay. And he has a theory of why missing time happens, okay? He obviously, you've heard when you displace time and gravity, inside of this bubble, you have a different time, if this makes sense. God, I wish I was a physicist. This would sound 20 times better what I'm about to go into. I'm going to give you the most bro version of this ever. So inside, the craft is in its own time warp, and outside, it's separate, okay? But when this time warp occurs, from what I'm understanding, and please don't kill me if I'm getting this wrong because I'm doing the best I can here, that there's a blue shift that happens on the outside of this bubble. And the blue shift is full of X-rays, gamma radiation. So if you get close to this bubble, if you get in this bubble even, or in it's the time situation. But the closer you get to this bubble, the more Lou believes the biological effects can come in to play. You can be damaged by these. Okay. He tells a story about two women driving down the highway, and this blue orb comes through the car and goes through the body and stuff like that. And it's the same kind of idea that causes this damage. Okay. So the interesting thing about the time side of it that we're going into here is that he thinks that's why that people experience missing time, because the closer that you get into this bubble, the more you're getting closer to the time separation in between these. There's like this middle area here where the times are kind of meeting and they're almost like blending. So you're getting in that range, and you're getting in the range of the time distortion, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't, but we're going to try. Okay. So that's what this image is showing here. Okay. So you get into this range. So if you're this far from this bubble, you'll have superficial burns in the skin, similar to a sunburn. Okay. If you get into this range of this bubble, you're going to have internal organ damage, changes to the brain. Okay. And they theorize whether or not the changes in the cauda putamen, I'm going to kill that phrase, referencing back to Gary Nolan, that's where some of this can happen. That's how some of this gets affected. But if you get into this bubble, you're going to experience that time dilation. So the closer you get, see how, even though you're not in, you can see right here on these lines, this will start to feel, this is what he's saying missing time is. This is his theory. It's not mine. Okay. This is a speculation, which is interesting enough. Okay. It's interesting enough. It's a cool theory. It's a cool theory. He feels that he's getting a lot of this from Hal Puthoff, though, of course. Hal Puthoff and him have had multiple Skiffs meetings, obviously, over the time. And so I'm assuming that it's Lou's opinion, it's Lou's speculation, all based off of Hal Puthoff and whatever advisors or people that are giving him like the rundown on some of these videos that he's supposedly seeing behind the scenes at the Pentagon that we haven't seen. Okay. So this is what he's developing his theories off of. So that's pretty cool. Pretty interesting. But the other interesting thing apart this bubble, you know what? I left too soon. Let's go back. Too soon. Lou speculates with these bubbles. Okay. This is a really cool part of the book. So he speculates that this bubble can only be so big. Okay. Because you can only, if you want to affect, gravity, you got to either have a lot of mass or a lot of energy. And so he thinks that these bubbles can only be so big around these crafts, that you would run into essentially a limitation of how big you can make it. So when you look at like these bigger crashes over time, or not crashes, these bigger crafts over time, and you see like triangle crafts. This is what I was referencing earlier when he finally kind of talks about triangles a little bit. He says, well, how can you move a bigger craft? Because we see these giant crafts, right? Some people speculate the Phoenix Lights was all one craft. Well, he speculates that these lights that you're seeing on the craft are not actually lights, that they're these bubbles, and that they're these time warp bubbles, and that what you would want to do is you would want to bring multiple bubbles closer together and merge them, because you would have to have the craft completely, entirely encased in the bubble. So if you needed a bigger craft, but you couldn't do one bubble, you'd have to do a lot of bubbles, right? So when you look at a triangle and it has a bubble on each end of the triangle, and then a bubble in the center of it, or light in the center, that would be 4 bubbles essentially if you had a really big triangle, and that would encase it all. Or if you wanted to, he speculates and theorizes that if you wanted to have multiple saucers, multiple discs moving together in formation, you could get them really, really close, and you could move multiple of these crafts at once that way. And I'm almost assuming like maybe saving energy that way. I don't know. But I thought that was really interesting. And then he talked about how, when you look at like a cigar shaped craft, for instance, that the way you would move a cigar shape is you would have like a bubble on each end of it, and those would kind of come together. I've never heard that theory. It's very cool. I will give him that. It's a very cool theory. I like it. I don't know if it's real, but I like it. It sounds pretty good to me. If that seems to be the case. So interesting speculation without a doubt. Where are we at here, guys? Yeah, bigger. So essentially, you got to get the bubbles to overlap, okay, and encase the whole craft. What do you guys think about that? I should probably be looking at a little bit more chat as we go here. Radiation, yup. Cash Landrum, rehash of a rehash. Yeah, for sure, Rotary. There's a lot of backtracking and double talking and stuff like that. Has been said. I see. It's a giant nothing burger. Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, hippie. I'll get to that, brother. Old hippie. I'll get to that. I just really what I'm doing right now, bro, is I'm just going through, I think, some of the interesting moments of the book, some of the highlights, and we're gonna go over my overall opinion of this stuff nearing at the end. This is all you gotta make up your mind on what you think is real with this stuff and what you don't. It is a lot of speculation. So let me look at this part here, because this next part I think is actually pretty interesting. Where you want to go? Obviously, he talks about Art's parts a little bit. He speculates on the bismuth piece that we talked about a few weeks ago. He seems to think that the way I'm taking it, that Oak Ridge is incorrect, that piece isn't prosaic at all. Okay, that should be a piece from a craft. He obviously speculates that UAP are using hydrogen in water for fuel. And so he brings up a lot of speculation about essentially the Earth being a gas station, as he would say, a temporary rest stop for them to come and refuel. And this may be why we're always seeing these USOs. We're seeing them in the water. They're out staying in the water. I think I've heard people kind of talk about that before. It's still a pretty interesting theory, but once again, a theory. Why don't we have proof of really where he's getting that from, right? That's what I think people wanted. People didn't want just the speculation and the theory, but it's there. Let me see. He kind of goes into how do I want to start this with you guys, man? Because this moves around a lot and it's kind of hard to explain. Lou feels that the activity from UAP, I guess, okay, so he talks about days where he's driving home from work, right? And Lou has this giant commute that's like 3 hours long from the Pentagon, okay? And he talks about all the speculation that he does on those drives. How he looks around the world and he sees people going to, sports practice, taking their kids to ballet, and he looks around at how all the people in the world just don't know really what's going on, and how he feels that that's unfair to these people and all of these things, right? He does a lot of speculation in that time, and he starts to think to himself, what is the intentions of these craft, of these NHI, these beings? What could that possibly be? And he kind of lands, I feel like, on more of the threat side of it. And Lou feels that the activity that the UAP are displaying looks a lot like an IPB. When he looks at all of the history, all the interaction that the UAP have had with us. And the IPB is an initial preparation of the battlefield. Okay? So that's where I feel we're getting into the threat area. When you look at, there's been multiple visits over the last 80 plus years that we know of. They've tested their kind of craft against us. He's saying, because he believes the Tic Tac is not ours. So he kind of references the Tic Tac as a good example of this theory. They've tampered, he says, with our ICBMs. They're kind of learning who we are and what our capabilities are. They're testing us, right? They're doing like the ultimate, like total recon, I guess is the way I would put it, like a total recon scenario. But he also brings up things like obviously people being attacked in Colaris and then people having their blood drained and people dying, obviously. So he says, hey, look, they've kind of attacked us. And then he brings up obviously abductions and implants. And so he when you look at all of these things, it's just, yeah, like I said, total recon, total in-depth trying to understand who we are, what we're capable of, would we be able to fight back, what we're all about. Okay. But that's really what he feels, is that they've been doing this. And the reason why this has been brought on, okay, the reason why he feels this way is when you look at our technological advancement over the last 80 years, how much we've advanced. Even since we dropped the first nuclear bomb, look at how the world's changed. And he's saying that these NHI might be fearing that we're getting into our hands on technology that we don't fully understand. Okay? That we don't really understand the potential, and that not only, it's not really about us harming us, that it's more about what could happen with them. And he uses this analogy. He tells the story, this gorilla, this 800-pound gorilla story, where he mentions that the story is like, if you had a gorilla that tore the cage enclosure in the zoo, tore the cage enclosure all up, that you would study the gorilla, right? And try to figure out what happened with the gorilla. But you'd be all right. You really wouldn't worry too much about it, right? Because it's still in the enclosure. But then if you came back to the zoo the next day and the gorilla had, went into an office, had broke out of the cage, went to the office and got a stun gun or what have you, and was kind of running around with it, you would be like, whoa, okay, wait a second. You take it a little bit more serious, right? Because this thing is getting out and it's grabbing, potentially problems. And then he said, then the next day you find that the gorilla actually escapes the zoo, steals a shotgun, and shows up at your front door. It's pretty an interesting analogy. But the gorilla's in your front yard with a shotgun. He's like, you have to decide whether or not, you're going to kill the gorilla, or, you're going to try to talk the gorilla down to put the shotgun down. Right. And I guess he's simply saying that, the shotgun is a technology the gorilla doesn't understand, but it's dangerous for the shotgun to be in the gorilla's hands. Okay. That's his analogy. I think that's his number one guess at what's going on with the phenomenon. What's happening is how they view us, is they view us as a gorilla on the front door with a shotgun, and that we could be posing problems for them and we don't really understand it. So the shotgun could be obviously nukes for us, right? It's a good example. Yeah, I don't know. There's stuff like that. It's not boring. I didn't think the book was boring. There were moments where I was kind of like, kind of trying to struggle through it. The Tic Tac chapter was a chapter that it took me some real brain focus to kind of pay attention to, because he just kind of tells the Tic Tac story again. There's a chapter on the USS Roosevelt where he kind of tells that story with Graves and all of that again. And so, some of those chapters are hard to get through, but the later chapters, when he gets into like this gorilla theory and his theory on what he thinks is going on with UAP and theory with the craft and theory with the time dilation, all of these things. I mean, that's where that's where I say the book starts to heat up. It starts to actually get really, really interesting. Where do we want to go here? Where do we want to go? Where are we at? Where are we at for time, guys? We're at an hour. We're at an hour. I know we usually do an hour, but we're going to go a little bit longer. Like I said, I can't go through the entire book, guys. There's just no way. And I had originally thought about doing a deep dive for the book, but I don't really think the book deserves really a deep dive. I don't think it needs it. I figured we would just kind of talk about some of the stuff that was here, go over that, maybe give you guys a little bit of a refresher on it, and maybe get some of my thoughts, so you guys understand maybe where I'm at with it. We only got a few things that I think is really, really important. Yeah, he brings up a little bit earlier in the book the Collins elite. Lou starts to talk about multiple fronts that are against the UFO and UFO UAP disclosure. He talks about how he feels like he's fighting against the legacy program because the legacy program doesn't want any of this information out. And then he also talks about this other group that I haven't looked a whole lot into, but it's called the Collins Elite. And what the Collins Elite is it's a group of like religious fundamentalists, okay, that are in the Pentagon. And people have talked about this. Lou brings it up where he kind of mentions where he's like, hey, you know, I brought, you know, some of this conversation to my higher ups, and they said, Lou, we already know what this phenomena is. It's demonic. You know, don't look into it anymore. He even was threatened of, hey, you know, that things will happen to you if you keep pushing at this, right? So he believes that the Collins Elite is a thing. He believes that that's there, that there are religious fundamentalists that are pushing narratives throughout the government that's affecting legislation, things like that. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I'm sure there is some kind of influence like that. Why wouldn't there be? But it's throughout the Department of Defense. You know, it's a big part of it, which shaped policy for it. So interesting. He touches on that. Let me see. He talks about the wedge shaped craft video, and he mentioned this is on Joe Rogan's episode 2, where he ended up going on Rogan. Which was, I personally thought the Rogan, not to tangent too much here, I thought the Rogan interview was pretty boring, personally. I feel like, and maybe I'll go into a little bit of that nearing the end, but I thought the Rogan interview was a little bit boring. I wish Rogan would have read the book. It didn't seem like Rogan even read the book. So the conversation was pretty lame. But Lou, in that conversation with Rogan and in the book, Lou explains this wedge-shaped craft video that we haven't seen, that he says exists, where you have a wedge-shaped craft that comes within 50 feet of the pilot, and you can hear the pilot freak out on the audio as it's like right by him. But he describes the craft as completely alien as it moved frame by frame through the video. Okay. So another interesting little video story that we have, but we don't have the video. Where's the video, Lou? It's classified. Sucks. He mentions that several senior officials Lou worked with told him that a colleague of Lou's had worked at the CIA and had got an official report of an autopsy of a non-human body that was recovered from a crash. Okay. So he's just getting this secondhand knowledge. And that's a lot of what's going on with him. But he does also kind of touch on how his email, and this was weird. I know John Greenwald kind of mentions this too, and this is a really weird situation where all of Lou's emails and files were deleted by OUSDI, claiming they had no historical value. And this was after he had ended up leaving the Pentagon, which was a problem, I guess, because Lou's Gitmo work, you know, at Guantanamo Bay, which, you know, that's a whole nother part of the book that he kind of goes into. Should have kept those files alive. They shouldn't have got rid of them. We don't really know the whole story with that, but I will give Lou that is a very weird situation. Why all his files got deleted, you know, very strange. He talks about how he people in the DOD said that the reason why Guantanamo Bay was still kept around, it wasn't closed down during the Obama administration, but it was because of Lou. That he worked at Camp 7, the notorious Camp 7 in Gitmo, where there were all the torture stuff that was going on, which was, you know, that stuff's tough. He doesn't really get into a lot of that in the book. He talked, you know, we've seen that stuff in the leaks for the book, The Czar of Torture, and how he talked about that. And he talked about, you know, him being called the Darth Vader of the U.S. How do I say this, man? I don't like it being brought up. I don't know. Him even talking about it still seems to me like he was a little bit prideful about it. But when you really listen to the book, and you don't get this from the written word, obviously, and this is why I liked him reading the book, is because you get the tone. He didn't tone it like he was really prideful about it. But it's like, why would you still put that there? I don't know. Maybe you want to just put that transparency out there. I don't know, man. It's bad. But I think it comes off in the audio. You get a tone difference to where it's weird, man. It's up in the air. I don't know. It's not good. But he doesn't go into much detail about it. He just simply says that he worked at Guantanamo, worked at Camp 7, the secret area there, and he was a part of that stuff. Where are we at? Hour 15. Okay. I'm going to start kind of getting off some of the highlights here. At the end of the book, we do, in the acknowledgments, we get a little bit of a preview, in the sense of, not preview, but we get a little bit of information about Dan Farah, that he's doing a documentary about Lou. Okay. So we have a Lou documentary that is coming out, or at least Lou's involved in it. I think he says he's just involved in it. He thanks a lot of anonymous people on UFO Twitter. That's kind of controversial. This is all in the acknowledgments and in the thanks area. And he thanks Tom DeLonge really late in the acknowledgments, more towards almost the end of the book, of the acknowledgments, which I thought was weird. And this kind of gets into what I think is missing from the book. I do think there are things that are missing from the book. I wanted Lou to talk more about the behind the scenes of TTSA and what really happened, and like what that whole process was like, you know, him talking to Tom. What was Tom more like? What were their interactions like? I don't know. It's such an integral part of Lou's story. You know, I know he's mentioned in the New York Times article, but I don't really remember. We didn't really get like a lot from him until they came out, until he kind of stepped onto the stage that day with TTSA at that media intro that Tom did, where you had everybody there. Justice. I wanted to hear more about what happened with Steve Justice. You know, I wanted to hear how they got him involved. I wanted to hear more, I don't know, just more about TTSA, more about his relationship with Tom. We didn't get anything about Kona Blue either. Not that I could tell throughout the book. I know that at one point, Lou speculates, you know, almost getting some more money involved, which I guess I do have to talk about that a little bit before we really move on. But he kind of talks about, you know, how they almost got $10 million to fund ATIP, and then the money fell through because it got pushed to another line item because Lou felt that he couldn't fight for the money because he was trying to keep ATIP quiet, which ATIP was my opinion, it wasn't an official program. It was a proposal. It was not proposal. It was a portfolio is the word. It was a side project. And I think Lou does honestly a really good job at even like explaining that. I kind of feel like Lou tells on himself a few times in this book. And what I mean by that is he says it's a portfolio, that it didn't have funding, that he misappropriated the funds to run ATIP. And he misappropriated, and that he took them, and if he had for instance, if he had a video that he wanted to get analyzed, you know, like a foreign adversary's jet or something like that, that he knew that if he used his money right, he could go ahead and get both the UAP analysis done on it and the prosaic analysis done on it at that time. You know, so and I feel like that's him saying that. It's him saying that, look, ATIP wasn't an official program. I feel like that's kind of just like admitting that that's the truth, you know, when so many people for so long have argued that was really the program. But I don't agree. I think the other thing that Lou kind of tells on himself a little bit about is how he got involved with TTSA from the start. And this was really a big deal for me. When I really first watched Who's Lou, Manny's documentary, this was like the biggest moment that stuck out, because, you know, Lou's story is that he left the Pentagon. He talks about it in the book, obviously, with nowhere to go, no real job prospect. He was putting his family in all this jeopardy for the money, and, you know, his daughters were moving into college and all of this stuff. And when you look at the research that Manny did, how he showed that, you know, they had moved out ahead, and Jen would always, his wife, kind of go ahead of him, and they had a place in Ensenada, and you kind of see that Lou wasn't very truthful about that, in my opinion. But when you read the book, he talks about meeting Jim Semivan for the first time. Okay, when they met Jim. And it was earlier on in the ATIP years when they met him, because what happened was Lou was trying to get a audience, get a conversation with Mattis, Secretary of Defense. Okay. Because he wanted to meet Mattis because he felt like that if he could get support from that area, that he could get things like interloper or get, just more seriousness brought to his project. Okay. To what they were doing, the portfolio with ATIP. Okay. Bring more legitimacy, I guess is a good way to say it. But they weren't kind of getting anywhere. Mellon talks about in the book how he tried to get that meeting with Lou or for Lou, but it ended up falling through. But when all that was going on, it wasn't looking good for Jay and Lou and the whole crew there over at ATIP. Hal Puthoff ends up recommending that they meet with Jim Semivan. Okay. This is pre-Lou obviously leaving the Pentagon. And when you look at the timing of that, Jim had in that SCIF meeting where they met with Hal and Lou, Jim had told Lou about TTSA, essentially about Tom DeLonge at the very least. He said Lou says that Jim told him that they were working with Tom DeLonge, a rock star, to bring more transparency to the topic. Okay. They had become friendly, Lou and Jim, and they had met multiple times. They got Jim to come in and try to help with the cause. That was the whole point, which was interesting enough because the way Jim and Lou met through Hal Puthoff's everywhere, man. He's everywhere. You can't tell me that when Hal Puthoff was involved with Semivan, because he was behind the scenes, Hal's still with TTSA, that they never had conversations with when Lou was getting to the point where he was going to leave the Pentagon for good. He was going to resign, bail out, that he didn't know about the potential of TTSA, about the TV deals, about, this building the craft and meeting up and grouping up with Tom and getting a paycheck through that. And another reason why I think that he definitely was not truthful about that this was something that he put together behind the scenes because he knew the guys and was talking to the guys behind the scenes about it before. Lou mentions in the book that people who work in the government have a dream of when they leave the government that they could, essentially get a nice cushy job in the private sector. So you expect me to believe that the guy who would love to leave when he leaves the government would love a nice private sector cushy job, who's in constant contact with the main people that are putting together a private sector situation like TTSA, that they never had that conversation. The second that I had learned about these meetings that he brings up of them meeting beforehand, that really told me there's no way they didn't have a conversation. I don't think Lou's truthful about that. I think he knew about TTSA. And a lot of people would say, well, why does this matter to you, dude? So what? It's the little things, man. It's the little things. The little things that he lies about that caused me to question the big stuff, right? I think that's really where it's at. And I think when you look at how he lays out the time frame of all that, and that's a part of what I'm saying when I say that if you don't look into this topic, you're going to miss things like that in this book. That's a situation where the general public just won't understand that connection. And they'll miss that inconsistency from Lou, and they'll be more apt to take everything else that he says at face value. Those are kind of the insider things that if you're not paying attention to, you're going to miss. And when I read that in the book, I said, damn, that really seals it for me. I think he bullshitted that. I think he knew. And I don't know, it's tough. Tough deal. So overall, let's try to wrap this thing up here. I don't know. That was a big part of the book for me. I was really looking to hear more about the behind the scenes on the OSAP ATIP TTSA thing. I wanted to get the timeline, man. I got a little bit of it. I didn't get as much depth as I wanted from it. I thought this book was going to be, 2 miles deep. I thought Lou was really going to not give us disclosure, but I thought he was going to give a lot of detail, man. A lot more detail. I didn't think we were going to be churning through the old cases like we were. I didn't think we were going to get 2 chapters, one on Tic Tac, one on Roosevelt. I didn't think we were going to do that. I didn't want to hear Lou describe the gimbal video to me. I didn't. I know why it's there, but it's not what I wanted. But it's there. So overall, for me, I'm lukewarm on the book. I think it was, because I know the thumbnail's like fire or trash. I don't think the book is fire. I don't think it's trash. I wish I could have put a third option there. I think if I had to do a 1 bite, everybody knows the rules, Dave Portnoy pizza score, I give the book probably a 6.4 out of 10. But that's just somebody who looks into this topic all the time. I was talking to my mom this morning, and she was telling me, she's like, oh, the book's getting rave reviews and everything like that. People are loving it. I'm like, who's liking it? Because I'm not seeing anything from like around where people are really going crazy. I'm hearing a lot of people that are upset about it. But to kind of give you my final thoughts on Lou himself here, just from where I'm landing right now with him, okay? I'm still suspicious of Lou, of course. I think you have to be. I think he was a little bit more honest about the timeline, about OSAP ATIP, kind of what happened behind the scenes. A lot more honest than I thought he would be with it. I think the timeline that he lays out is probably the real one. The other ones are not, and he fabricated that stuff for whatever reason, in my opinion. Okay. But what my biggest takeaway is that after I read this book, Lou is less important to me. And I think this is really why I feel lukewarm on this book at the end of the day more than anything. This is kind of the big sum up that I've been teasing you guys with here, okay? When you look and you read how Lou got his information throughout the Pentagon, he dealt with FOIA, looked around at the videos that were there. It's all very, very mild, okay? Or excuse me, it's all very modern. It's modern time stuff, okay? He says there's these modern videos, right? Sure. I can't see him. I don't know whether to believe him. But the point is Lou never had access to the legacy program. And I feel like a lot of people felt that was at least possible, that he had access at least to material, not that he was involved in the legacy program, but that he had got his hands on actually material from those programs, maybe videos from the 40s and the 50s, maybe documents from the 40s and the 50s, or even the 60s and 70s, or, got a hold of this stuff, that Lou had his hands and his eyes a lot deeper into this cover up than he does. And it shrunk the importance that I feel like overall that he has on the topic today. And what I mean by that, the reason why I specify today is because we know, especially from the book, he talks about how he helped write legislation, right? He's the UAPDA, him and Mellon put a lot of work into that, into the writing, into the legislation. So he has some relevance there with it. But all of these stories, right? All of these orb stories that he has, all the stories about him seeing the wedge-shaped craft video and the 23-minute video and all of these things, I just feel like it would have hit so much harder like 2 years ago. Especially if he's not going to provide any updated evidence. If he's just going to tell stories, that a lot of this is just going to fall flat. It falls flat for me. I enjoyed the speculation. You guys know I love the speculation. It's fun to talk about it. It's really fun to say, hey, the closer you get to the craft, the more time shifts and stuff. It's awesome. It's a great part about this whole topic of UFOs. But I just feel like the book is really late, and when I look at the future for Lou, I think he's going to get a Tucker Carlson interview. He thanks Tucker Carlson at the end of the acknowledgments, so I don't know why if he thanks him, that he's not going to go there. He'll go there. He's went everywhere else at this point. It just showed me that Lou's relevance has really faded to like the future of the topic. And I think that this is all he's really got, of his story. I don't think he really has anything else to tell us. I don't see anything really coming out with him anymore. I know he's talking about continuing to hammer at the UAPDA that no matter how many times it gets thrown out or crushed or stripped apart, that, they're going to continue to push at it. I don't really think that's true, personally. Mainly because I think that Congress will fade in its interest as, every time the UAPDA gets tried to put in and they smack it down. I think it'll drop more and more and more. But like the status, that's the best way I can describe it. The status level, the importance that I thought that maybe he could hold, it just fell to the wayside. He just seemed like another Grush. Like he put himself on that kind of a level. Well, maybe that's not the good way to put it. Not like Grush, because Grush obviously, okay, I take that back. I don't mean Grush. Like, I guess it just, that the allure is gone. That's what I'm trying to say. The allure from him is just gone. People have waited for years for this book, and they really thought they were going to get some really great information on this book. And I don't think we got tangible, great stuff. Does it mean the book sucks? No. Does it mean just because he makes some good speculation and there's some, he maybe was a little bit honest about the timeline a little bit more, does that mean we got to believe him? No. But I'm less interested in Luis Elizondo than I ever have been. I feel like we can almost close the chapter on the guy in a weird way. Does that make sense? I know I'm trying to look at the chat a little bit, see what you guys think. His Cosmic Science says, I keep on hearing Lou will bring disclosure one step further. All he really does at the end of the very, very end of the book is he gives a call to action that says, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. It's coming. Things are coming. That's always been Lou's motto. Buckle up. It's coming. Just wait. Next year, a few months away. I don't hate the guy. I don't. Like, I don't have ill feelings to him. I don't even know him personally. How could I hate him? Do I believe him? Not really on a lot of this stuff. No, you got to prove it. You can't make claims like you're remote viewing and turning yourself into an angel almost and stuff like that. It's all really wild stuff. I think it's worth a read. I think it's definitely worth the read. Like I said, a 6.4. It's not unreadable. It's interesting. But I think what a lot of people might find is that it just kind of closes the book for him. and I guess in the irony of saying that, it kind of closes the book on him, man. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see much more from Lou. I think that you're going to see Lou kind of go through this interview chain. He's going to pop in and out a little bit here or there, but being this key figure anymore, I don't see it. I just don't see it. Yeah, where are we at? Hour and a half. Look, I know I probably left a lot of stuff out of here, guys, that it's in the book, and you guys and people that are watching later on in the video on demand later, watching it back are probably gonna be like, dude, how did you not bring this up? How did you not bring that up? Dude, it's, the book is huge. It's hefty, in the sense of like how much is there. Like I said before, don't mean to keep repeating myself because I kind of criticize Lou for doing that, but it's a mile long and an inch deep. So I recommend you read it for sure. I recommend that you go through it. I think that you would, you might catch up on a couple of things with the timelines. You might find something that you like. The entertainment is definitely there for you, even if it picks up more at the end. But yeah, that's my take, man. I'm interested to see what you guys think, man. I'm interested to see what people are how they're digesting the book and what's going to come out later on. Because let's be honest, dude, this book came out Tuesday. It's Sunday. I I went through it, man. Like I sat down. I wish if I had it on my other computer, I could show you guys the notes I took, man. I've got fucking the whole book, dude. Notes the whole way through every chapter. It made it so difficult to try to like pick what to bring over here because you just don't want to leave anything out, but it's the way that it's going to go. Let me see here. Let's get a little bit of this music going here. Okay. Marcus is not going to read. Good show. Thank you, dude. Look, I hope you guys enjoyed this, man. I've never done a book review or anything like that. I gave it my best shot here. I'm new at this when it comes to this stuff. So I hope I gave you guys the detail that you were looking for. I hope you found something of value into it. I hope that I came across with my opinions well for you guys, so you have a good idea of where I'm standing. I just didn't want to parrot the book to you. You know, I didn't want to parrot it, but it's like a little bit that's there. I am going to be on Alien Addict in a couple hours. We're going to do like a round panel. We're going to discuss the book as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So don't miss that. Head on over there. Hopefully, Nick, you're going to be there, bro. You got to come on. Did you read the book? Dude, I want to see you. I want to talk to you, Nick. So hopefully you're there, dude. What am I got to think? I got to think of something else here. Where we go. We'll see what's going on next week. I should be doing a show. My back is getting better, guys. It is, but it's not perfect. It's going to take some time. I'm happy I'm able to be here today though and talk to you guys about it. I felt a little bit guilty because like I was like, man, if I missed the show, I've been talking about this book for a while. I was going to talk about it and read it. So I want to make sure you guys got that content, man. But yeah, have a good rest of your Sunday. Keep an eye out on Twitter. Like, share, subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, dude, if you guys want to get some more updates, know when the shows are going. But that's going to do it for me, guys. All right? I'll see you over on Alien Act a little bit later. Thank you to everybody in chat. Rotary, John. I didn't do this last time. My bad. Spite Fairy. Nick, obviously, always cool to have you here. Gebs, the man, dude. Corbell's cat. Yeah, wait a second. This guy's name is Corbell's cat. The most truthful he's been was early on in the book that changed the scene. Obviously, Jeff Garvey. I don't want to leave names out, man. You guys are here every week. Steve Hammers, obviously, dude. You guys are awesome, man. Thanks for coming and hanging by. I'll see you guys a little later, all right? I got to end this damn thing. See you guys next week.
No UFO live stream shows on What the Truck. Hold up, what am I thinking? Terrestrial materials on at 1 p.m. Eastern. Terrestrial material, give me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you find me at. Aliens and AI, Matt, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps and rotary motion. The cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Garvey and Tim G. Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Live stream shows on What the Truck. Hold up, what am I thinking? Terrestrial materials on at 1 p.m. Eastern. Terrestrial material, give me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you find me at. Aliens and AI, Matt, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps and rotary motion. Cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Garvey and Tim G. Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go! Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please don't forget to like, share, and me a recap. Terrestrial material, that's where you find me at. Aliens and AI, Matt, he's a hell of a guy. I bet I'll see John Stokes' steps in rotary motion. The cosmic twilight will hang out too. Jeff Guardian and G-Star will sure stop by. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.